Hi, the topic today is multiple tongue. And this is the technique that brass players and flute players, and even occasionally some single reed players use when you need to articulate fast passages. Multiple tongue involves using a different tongue syllable. The normal syllable is ta. So I'm going to set a tempo and I'm going to tongue speak 16. Ta, 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 ta. You can go along with me. In fact, it makes sense. Let's try this. There we go. So with duplets, the break point for most brass players is a quarter note equals 120, the classic march tempo. 16th notes that are faster than that just can't be handled by a normal single tongue. So we use a multiple tongue system, and that involves the letter K. Normal tonguing is ta. Multiple tonguing involves a combination of ta and ka. So again, I'm going to ask you to sing along with me. Say ta, ka, ta, ka, ta, ka, ta, ka. Notice that it is a front to back, ta, ka, ta, ka, ta, ka, ta motion. The K syllable is actually the middle of your tongue kicking the air, as opposed to the ta syllable where it's articulating in a forward motion. So it's a back forth, ta, ka, ta, ka, ta, ka, ta, ka, ta, ka, ta, ka, ta. That's multiple tonguing. There are two kinds, duplets, which is called double tonguing, obviously, and triplets, which is, wait for it, triple tonguing. Double tonguing is the ta-ka, 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 ta syllable. Triple tonguing is two T's and a K. Ta-ta-ka, 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 ta. Now, let's just try speaking double tongue quickly right here. There's the essence of double tonguing. And again, the break point is usually 16th notes at 120. Use this when it's just too fast a single tongue, and I would say this is when you teach kids probably in high school. I can't imagine a piece of music going that quickly when you're in junior high. It's one of those things that you want to teach before you need it. What you don't want to do is start rehearsing a piece and go, whoops, my brass players need a double tongue and I haven't taught that yet. So plan a little bit ahead. This is not something, if you remember the legato tongue talk I gave before, this is not something that comes easily, nor does it come quickly. So give the brass players time to learn this. Another thing, when you're teaching multiple tonguing, and you almost always start with double tonguing, is they have to have an overlap area. You don't want to be able to, and I'm going to use my hand because this makes sense, if this were quarter note equals 120, you don't want your single tongue to go up to here, but your double tongue to go down to here, and then there's a gray area there where you can neither double tongue nor single tongue. So logically, you want to single tongue up to here, and double tongue, I wish I had a third arm, double tongue down to here, where there's an overlap period there. Usually again around quarter note equals 120. As somebody who's done a lot of time sitting in the back row of an orchestra, I can tell you from experience that sometimes conductors may get a little excited in concerts, and all of a sudden the passage you have single-tongued all these days, suddenly you have the double tongue, wearing a tuxedo and playing in front of people in the audience. So I work very hard to make sure that my single and double tongue can go back and forth and match each other. I happen to have a slow single tongue, and I have tried for years to increase that thing to faster than 120, and I've kind of given up. I kind of gave up about 20 years ago, and I realized that my life would be easier if I just practiced slow double tonguing. So this is as far as I could go, single tonguing already. That's where I can go double tonguing. You'll find some people who can single tongue amazingly fast, and it's just the way it is. It could be genetics, but I don't know. I don't have that kind of a doctorate. Now, to teach you to your kids, I have a handout that is linked, and it's called, strangely enough, Multiple Tongue Exercise. The idea here is to develop the K syllable so it is as strong an articulation as the ta syllable. It will start off like tuck, tuck, tuck. In other words, the K syllable is just barely there. This is to develop a strong K syllable. One thing I have found is that quite a few brass players learn to double tongue like this. And they can't double tongue any slower than that. So it's a 5-step process. The bass rhythm is 4/8 notes and a half note. I'm starting on an F. Now, I'm going to play that 5 different times. And the idea is to match each time, no matter what the articulation is. So, number 1, I have to read this, is ta, 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 ta. Number 2 is ka, 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 ka. That's a tough one. Number 3 is ta, ka, ta, ka, ta. That is the standard double tongue. Then 4 is ka, ta, ka, ta, ka. 5 is ta, 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 ta. Again, the idea is to have all of these sound the same. I do it very slowly because you want to develop a strong K syllable that can only be done by practicing slow. Now, you can see that there are differences there, but for the most part, it sounds pretty close. But I'm using K's and T's back and forth in different ways. I would just have the kids start on that and do that exercise on an F scale or on a B flat scale. You want to keep it in the middle range. Don't go too high. Don't go too low. And the idea again here is to do it slowly to develop a really strong K syllable. Then you can increase the speed. See, I just showed off my slow single tongue. And so on. The classic. That's Jenkins' American Overture, where most brass players, like it or not, have to learn how to double tongue. So, that's a good exercise for developing it. Now, as you get faster, that back and forth motion of ta, ka, ta, ka, ta, ka, it gets to be almost impossible to do. At that point, you soften the tongue so it's more like a da, ga. Da, ga, da, ga, da, ga, da, ga, da, ga, da, ga, da. So I'm almost going to a legato tongue. That way I'm slowing down the back and forth motion of the tongue. It's just a matter of when it feels comfortable to do that. Notice that the triple tongue, I haven't really talked much about. Especially with trombone, you don't really find triplets at a tempo that need to be, you need to use multiple tongue very often. So double tonguing comes first. The syllables I gave you were ta, ta, ka. Ta, ta, ka, ta, ta, ka, ta, ta, ka, ta. Some brass players have learned to take a double tongue pattern, ta, ka, ta, ka, ta, ka, ta, and in a sense, accent the triplet, ta, ka, ta, ka, ta, ka, ta, ta, ka, ta, ta, ka. I'm not sure I would teach it that way. I don't think it's that effective because it puts the K syllable on a strong beat every other time. So I think it's best to go with the ta, ta, ka. For triple tonguing, take it slowly. Use a lot of air. And notice when I was doing the exercise how hard I hit those notes. Da, 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 da. Almost unmusically. I'd love to do this. Here's unmusical playing. The second one was ta, ka, ta, 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 ka, ta, ka, ta. I wouldn't play that way in public, but what I'm doing is developing a really strong K syllable. A lot of air, rather short, and very percussive on the K. It takes a while to develop double tonguing. It's something you can practice on scales. You want to make sure you introduce it so that they have at least 2 or 3 weeks as brass players, young brass players, to develop it and then apply it to the music. Avoid having your brass players become those people who can only double tongue fast. digga-digga-da, 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 because when they go to, say, a 132 tempo, whoop, problems. They can't play. So that's multiple tonguing. It can be transferred to any brass instrument. When you get into the conical bore, tuba, and euphonium area, and I'm a euphonium player also, I tended to use a soft da-ga-da-ga-da tongue all the time. I think it's just because of the nature of the instrument. Euphonium is much more conical bored than the trombone, which is 50% cylindrical bore. It's a matter of the way the instrument blows. So that's multiple tonguing. You can find that everywhere in music, anything that goes fast. A really good example is the orchestral piece, Rimsky-Korsakov, Scheherazade, which has multiple tonguing for all the brass players, especially trumpet. If you find a really fine orchestral recording of that, and the classic one is the 1960 Chicago Symphony recording, you really hear how spectacular multiple tonguing can be on not just trumpet, but on all the brasses. On trombone, it's da, da. Notice that in order to play that rhythm, I had to start on like a da, da, da. So it's out there, and it's again something that needs to be introduced carefully, early, and practiced slowly at first. That's multiple tonguing.